He didn't build this place to impress anyone. He built it so someone like you could carry it forward.
She's right, but first, there were a few people in my building who had no idea who they were talking to. My ex-girlfriend mocked me in my own food court. Her new boyfriend told me his family built my building. Her best friend filmed the whole thing and posted it for clout. They called me a delivery boy, and they were right. I'd been carrying boxes through that building every day for years, without knowing that every floor, every store, and every lease would one day belong to me. My grandfather built it all and never told a soul. He taught me to be the same way. Quiet, patient, invisible. But patience has a limit, and mine ran out the day she sat at a table I owned, tagged a restaurant that owed me 3 months of rent, and called it an upgrade. So how does a delivery boy end up owning an entire building? It started with a death, an envelope, and a building full of people who had no idea who was walking through the door. I walked into Grandview Plaza the same way I had every day for the past 3 weeks. Through the side entrance, past the security desk, carrying a box of office supplies I could have asked someone else to deliver. As I crossed the lobby, I paused at the framed photo of my grandfather near the elevator bank, the one that had been there since the building opened. I didn't stop. I never stop. But that day, I glanced at it longer than usual. The food court was loud for a Tuesday. I could smell Mr. Chen's restaurant from across the hall, sesame oil and ambition. And there, at a table by the window, sat Vanessa, my ex-girlfriend of 2 weeks. She was sitting in my food court, at a table I technically owned, laughing into the neck of a man I'd never seen before, posting stories about her upgrade to anyone with a Wi-Fi connection. She dumped me 14 days ago, over text, said I had no future, no ambition, and no plan beyond carrying boxes until my knees gave out. She was right about most of it. I was a delivery boy who spent every afternoon running supplies through a building I didn't realize I'd inherit. My grandfather died 3 weeks ago. The will was finalized 10 days after that. When Vanessa chose her upgrade, I was genuinely broke. The timing was almost poetic. Vanessa spotted me before I could decide whether to care. She nudged the man next to her, Marcus Chen, son of the restaurant owner, the kind of guy who leased a car and called it a fleet. He looked me up and down, the work clothes, the box in my hands, the complete absence of anything that impressed him. Then he smirked. Diana was there too. She worked at the clothing boutique 2 floors up, and never missed a lunch break that put her within orbit of anyone she perceived as wealthy. She had her phone out before Marcus even opened his mouth. Marcus stood up, spread his arms like he was presenting the building, and delivered what I assume he thought was a devastating line. "This is my family's territory. Every floor, every store, my family built this." He said it with the confidence of a man who had never once read his own lease agreement. Diana was filming. Vanessa was glowing. The whole table radiated the energy of people who had mistaken proximity for ownership. Vanessa added her own contribution. She looked at me with the kind of pity you'd reserve for stray animals and said, "You'll be delivering packages your whole life, Ethan. That's just who you are." She posted a selfie from that table 15 minutes later. Tag the restaurant. Caption, "Leveled up." She was sitting in my building, tagging a business that hadn't paid rent in 3 months and calling it an upgrade. I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I didn't explain that the building she was sitting in had my name on the deed, or that the restaurant she'd tagged owed me 90 days of back rent. My grandfather used to say, "Wealth that speaks is wealth that leaks." He built this entire plaza and wore the same 3 jackets for 20 years. I figured I could keep my mouth shut for 5 more days. Interesting, that was all I gave them. 1 word. I picked up my box and walked past their table to the elevator. Not the exit, the elevator. I went up, past the food court, past the boutiques, past every floor those 3 had never once bothered to explore, to the top floor, the property management office, my grandfather's desk. I sat down and pulled the tenant files from Mr. Chen's restaurant. 3 months behind on rent. Documented. My grandfather's personal inspection notes from his monthly walkthroughs. Complaints about cheap ingredients substituted for premium ones. Cleanliness falling below what the lease required. All on record. Then I checked Marcus's social media, because a man who screams, "My family built this," at a delivery boy deserves a closer look. Post after post claiming his family owned the space, owned the building, built the floor. I pulled up the lease. They rent. 1 unit, ground floor. I took screenshots and laid them beside the lease terms. The contradiction was almost artistic. My phone rang while I was comparing screenshots to legal documents. It was Mia, the property management intern who'd been processing my grandfather's paperwork since before I even knew there was paperwork to process. She'd been at the office since last summer, had met my grandfather a few times before he passed. She told me once that he always brought tea for the staff and never raised his voice. I liked that she remembered that about him.
Hey, the final inheritance documents came through from the lawyer. They need your signature by Friday at the latest, or we'll have to refile the whole thing. Also, the tenant meeting you asked me to schedule, do you have a date in mind? I can send the notices out tomorrow morning if you give me a window. And Ethan, are you okay? You sound like you've had a day.
5 days. The lease has an urgent transition clause for ownership changes. Use it for the notice period. Send it to every tenant with an outstanding balance, not just one. And I'm fine, Mia. Found some things in the tenant files worth reading. 5 days. That was enough. Enough time to gather every receipt, every screenshot, every violation report my grandfather had documented over the years. Enough time to let Marcus post a few more ownership claims. Let Diana film a few more videos for her 18 followers. Let Vanessa tag a few more selfies from a restaurant that owed me 3 months of rent, in a building she didn't know I owned. I hung up and looked at my grandfather's photo on the desk, the same face as the one downstairs in the lobby. The man who built this place and never told a soul what it was worth. I had 5 days, and I had all the patience he taught me. The video went up that same night. I was still organizing files at my grandfather's desk when Mia forwarded me a link. No message, just a link and a screenshot. I clicked it. Diana had posted the footage of my humiliation with a caption that read, "Delivery boys who can't take a hint," complete with a crying laughing emoji I'm sure she agonized over for at least 3 seconds. Vanessa shared it within the hour, adding commentary about finding a man with actual ambition. Diana replied publicly underneath, "That's my girl. I'll always have your back." They tagged each other like it was a joint press release for a breakup neither of them had the depth to feel guilty about. Then Marcus made the move that would eventually cost him the most. He reposted Diana's video from the restaurant's official business account, not his personal page, the verified business page his father had spent 6 years building through actual work. Marcus had always treated the restaurant's social media like his personal diary. His father had complained about it more than once. Marcus called it building the brand. This time, he was building a liability he couldn't take back. He just didn't know it yet. The post linked mockery of a private individual directly to a registered business operating on a lease in my building. I saved it, timestamped, archived. Vanessa's account was worse. Over the next 2 days, she posted 6 times from Marcus's restaurant. Food photos captioned, "Being treated right for once." A video of Marcus pouring wine with the caption, "When he owns the place." Selfies in the restaurant booth tagged with the building's address. Each post was a love letter to a lie. She was building a public archive of her own future humiliation, and the internet was applauding every entry. I saved those too, all of them. Apparently my humiliation was great for engagement. The restaurant gained 50 new followers that day. A classmate I hadn't spoken to since freshman year sent me a screenshot with a message that said, "Bro, you good?" I was better than good. I had a growing folder of time-stamped evidence. Every post, every comment, every reshare. Every piece of content they created was another line item in a case that was getting thicker by the hour. Let them talk. The meeting was in 4 days. 2 days after the humiliation, 3 days before the meeting, I was crossing the lobby with another box of supplies when Marcus spotted me near the elevator bank. He peeled away from the restaurant entrance with the energy of a man who'd just been validated by the internet and wanted to make sure I felt it. Diana was already recording before he reached me. Vanessa watched from behind him, arms folded, wearing the smirk of someone who believed she was on the winning side of history. Marcus gestured at everything around us, the stores, the food court, the marble floors his father's rent money helped maintain, and said something I will remember for the rest of my life. My family built this. Every store you see, every tile you're standing on, that's our legacy. Your job is to carry things through our door. He pointed at the box in my hands like it was proof of something. He paused for effect, as if he expected the lobby to break into applause. I looked at him the way you'd look at a man confidently giving directions to a city he's never visited. "You should talk to your landlord about that." He laughed. He actually laughed. That full-body, head-tilted back laugh people do when they think the joke is beneath them. Vanessa laughed too. Diana kept her phone steady, capturing everything, because that's what good satellites do when the planet makes a sound. I walked to the elevator without looking back. Not the exit. Up. always up. They stayed on the ground floor, where the food was cheap and the lies were loud. I went to the top floor, where the truth lived in filing cabinets and lease agreements. The symbolism wasn't subtle, but nothing about Marcus was subtle. Upstairs, Mia had the Chen restaurant file open and organized across the conference table. She'd been pulling records since that morning. The picture was getting clearer by the hour. Mr. Chen's restaurant owed 3 months of rent. $14,800. Not an estimate. An exact number documented to the cent in my grandfather's accounting. The kind of meticulous record that doesn't leave room for negotiation. My grandfather used to walk the building every month. Not as an inspection, he called them visits. He'd stop at every store, every restaurant, every office. He noticed things. His personal inspection notes for Mr. Chen's restaurant told a story the health department never got to read. Cheap ingredients passing as premium, grease traps overdue for cleaning, storage conditions that would make a food safety auditor reconsider lunch. These weren't official government citations, but the lease included a clause, Section 7.3, Maintenance of Health and Safety Standards as a Condition of Occupancy. Mr. Chen had been in quiet breach of his own lease terms for over a year. My grandfather gave him warnings. I'd be giving him a deadline. I pulled up the social media screenshots, the ones I'd saved on day one, and cross-referenced them against the lease agreement. Every post where Marcus claimed ownership contradicted a specific clause. The lease read, "Tenant occupies Unit 1A under standard rental agreement." Marcus's feed read, "My family's building, my family's legacy." I highlighted the contradictions. There were 11 of them. Each one was a documented breach of the misrepresentation clause buried in Section 12 of every tenant's lease. My grandfather's lawyers were thorough people.
There's one more thing. An old file clipped to the back of their original lease. It's got your grandfather's handwriting on it. Looks personal, not business. Want me to pull it out?
Later. I've got enough reading for today. I didn't know what was in that file. I wouldn't open it for another 3 days. Not until the night before the meeting, when I finally ran out of business documents and had nothing left but the personal ones. When I did open it, it would change the way I walked into that room. But that evening, it went into the later pile, behind rent receipts, behind screenshots, behind a lease that proved Marcus Chen had been lying to everyone within earshot. I had a system. Evidence first, emotions later. I told Mia to draft the notices that afternoon. Standard new owner procedure. Every tenant with an outstanding balance or a flagged violation receives a formal letter. Lease review scheduled. Payment plans offered where appropriate. Violations documented. Response required within 30 days. The notices went out to 7 tenants across the building. Mr. Chen's envelope was the thickest. 3 months of overdue rent, maintenance compliance issues, and a mandatory in-person review at the upcoming tenant meeting. His name wasn't special on that list. His file was just the worst. I learned later, from a building maintenance worker who overheard them arguing through the restaurant's kitchen vent, that Mr. Chen's hands were shaking when he opened the envelope. He called Marcus immediately, and Marcus, in the grand tradition of men who have never solved a single problem they didn't first make worse, told his father not to worry. Some new landlord trying to flex. "I'll handle it, Dad. Trust me, I'll handle it." That was the phrase I filed away alongside everything else Marcus had said that week. I was building quite the collection. Every word out of his mouth was either a lie, a threat, or a promise he couldn't keep. Sometimes all three at once. I genuinely wanted to see what handling it looked like for Marcus Chen. I'd watched him handle a confrontation. He spread his arms in a lobby and lied about owning a building he rented. I'd watched him handle social media. He posted evidence of his own misconduct from a verified business account. Whatever his plan was, I had a feeling it involved showing up somewhere loud, making threats to someone patient, and generating more documentation of his own incompetence. 3 days to the meeting. The notices were delivered, the evidence was compiled, the clock was ticking, and every second they spent bragging was a second I spent building. Let them talk. Let them post. Let them handle it. The meeting would answer everything. It took Marcus exactly 48 hours to make good on his promise. He handled it exactly the way I expected, by showing up somewhere he'd never been and yelling at people who had nothing to do with his problems. I wasn't there when it happened. I was at the university, sitting through a macroeconomics lecture about market corrections, which, looking back, was appropriate. Marcus showed up at the property management office on the top floor, a floor he had never once visited in all the years his family had rented space in the building. He didn't know the layout, didn't know the staff, didn't know which door to knock on, so he knocked on all of them. The receptionist told him the new owner wasn't available for walk-in consultations. Marcus told her he didn't need a consultation. He needed whoever was running this circus to understand that his family had been here for years, that they built this floor, and that if anyone thought they could intimidate the Chens with a rent notice, they had another thing coming. The staff stayed professional. They'd handled difficult tenants before. They didn't reveal the owner's identity, standard policy. The management company acts as intermediary. They smiled. Marcus kept yelling. They kept smiling. He was generating a very detailed incident report without realizing it.
Your tenant's son just walked into the office. He's demanding to see the new owner, and he's very loud. Should I call security, or do you want me to just let this play out?
Let him be loud. Write down everything he says, word for word. Mia didn't need to be told twice. She sat in the back office with the glass partition between her and Marcus's performance, documenting every claim, every threat, every lie, including the part where he told the receptionist his family built this floor. That was lie number 12 on my running count. His father signed a standard rental agreement for a ground floor restaurant unit in 2018. Nobody in his family built anything except a reputation for late payments and loud exits. I'll give Marcus one thing. He wasn't a coward. He was stupid, but he wasn't a coward. Most people would have hired a lawyer. Marcus hired himself. What happened next, I didn't expect. An old tenant, Mr. Park, who ran a shoe repair shop on the second floor and had been in the building for over 20 years, saw Marcus storming out of the management office and into the hallway. Mr. Park knew my grandfather, watched me grow up carrying boxes through that same hallway. He'd seen me going in and out of the management office every day for the past 3 weeks, and he was smart enough to connect it to the inheritance he'd heard about through building gossip. He didn't pull Marcus aside out of kindness. He pulled him aside because he was worried. If some hothead's aggression toward the new management caused a crackdown, it would mean raised rents and stricter enforcement for everyone, including Mr. Park's shop. He told Marcus, in so many words, "Listen, kid, if you piss off the new ownership, they might crack down on all of us. That delivery boy you keep mocking, I've seen him going in and out of the management office for weeks. Be careful who you mess with." Marcus froze. For exactly 3 seconds, I'm told, his face went blank. Then he laughed. Hard. That confident, dismissive, how dare you waste my time laugh that men like Marcus keep loaded in their back pocket for any idea that threatens their worldview. That loser? He's a delivery boy. He carries boxes. There's absolutely no way. He had the answer, right there in that hallway, handed to him by a man with 20 years of building knowledge. And he threw it away because accepting it would mean everything he believed about himself was a lie. The next morning, 2 days before the meeting, I was crossing the lobby with a box of printer paper for the office. I still carried boxes. Not as a disguise, I hadn't stopped being the person my grandfather raised. Mia had told me twice that week that I didn't have to haul supplies anymore, that we had staff for that. I told her someone had to do it. The truth was simpler than strategy. I hadn't fully grown into being an owner yet. I was still the kid who carried things. That was about to save me. Marcus appeared from the restaurant hallway, and this time, something was different. No smirking, no grand gestures, no audience. He walked toward me with a strange, focused energy, studying me like I was a puzzle piece that didn't fit the picture he'd built in his head. He stopped 2 feet in front of me and asked, quietly for the first time, "You're always here, every day. Why? You just deliver packages, right? What's upstairs for you?" "I deliver to the offices upstairs. Standard route, same one I've had for 3 years. He wasn't satisfied. He pushed. "Someone told me you might be connected to the new management, that you've been going in and out of their office." I set the box down on the lobby bench, looked him dead in the eye, and said what he needed to hear. "Do I look like management to you?" He scanned me, top to bottom. The work clothes I'd been wearing since I was 17, the box of printer paper, the scuffed shoes. Everything about me said, nobody. And Marcus needed that to be true more than he needed oxygen. The relief washed over his face like sunrise. He laughed again, shorter this time, almost grateful. "You're right, forget it." He turned to leave, then stopped, looked over his shoulder, and said the words I'd been waiting for him to say since the day he spread his arms in my lobby and called it his kingdom. "When I find the new landlord, he'll regret messing with my family." I picked up my box, walked to the elevator, and filed that sentence in my memory, right next to every lie, every brag, and every video Diana had ever posted. 2 days. He'd find out who the new landlord was in 2 days. And I was fairly certain regret wasn't the word he'd be using. While Marcus was busy hunting a landlord he'd already met, something quieter and uglier was happening on the ground floor. Mia kept me updated. She had a front row seat from the office window that overlooked the food court, and she described Diana's pivot with the clinical precision of someone documenting a wildlife migration. Diana had seen the writing on the wall the moment the rent notices landed. She worked at the clothing boutique on the second floor, also a tenant, also in my building. The notices made her nervous about her own job, but more than that, Diana was a calculator dressed as a person. She looked at Marcus's family and saw trouble. She looked at Vanessa and saw a girl attached to a sinking ship. And she did what Diana always did. She looked for the next lifeboat. She stopped responding to Vanessa's texts, started showing up at Mr. Chen's restaurant alone, talking to Marcus without Vanessa present, offering to help with the landlord situation. She even approached Mr. Chen directly, syrupy sweet, all smiles, the concerned family friend who just wanted to support them through this difficult transition. Remember, I'll always have your back, girl. That post was 9 days old. The shelf life of Diana's loyalty was shorter than the rental agreement on the handbag she carried to work every morning. Vanessa noticed. Of course she noticed. Diana was about as subtle as Marcus was honest. She confronted her. Diana deflected without breaking a sweat. I'm just trying to help your boyfriend's family. You should be thanking me. Vanessa felt the betrayal like a second breakup, but she couldn't prove it, and she couldn't afford to lose Diana too. Not now. Not when Marcus was spiraling and the meeting was 48 hours away. So she swallowed it. And for the first time since she dumped me, Vanessa was completely alone. The rats were leaving the ship. Unfortunately for Diana, she was jumping onto a different part of the same ship. She just hadn't read the name on the hull yet. The night before the meeting, I sat in my grandfather's office, going through the last of the files. Mia had stayed late to help organize the presentation materials. The building was quiet. The food court was dark, the stores were locked, and the only light on the top floor was the desk lamp my grandfather had used for 30 years. On my desk, in the later pile I'd been avoiding for 3 days, sat the old file clipped to the back of Mr. Chen's original lease, the one with my grandfather's handwriting. I'd run out of business documents. There was nothing left but the personal ones. I opened it. The first note was dated 8 years ago, the year Mr. Chen applied for the restaurant lease. My grandfather's handwriting was small and careful, the way it always was when he was thinking clearly. Mr. Chin, hardworking, honest, needs a chance. Reduced rent for first 2 years. Everyone deserves a start. Below it, a second note, dated 4 years later. Chin is cutting corners. Cheap ingredients. Talk to him. He promised to fix it, giving him time. That was it. 2 notes. 2 chances. Written by a man who built a building worth millions and wore the same 3 jackets until they fell apart at the seams. I stared at those notes longer than I should have. The handwriting it was the first time I'd seen his writing since he died. It didn't feel like reading words. It felt like hearing a voice I'd already started forgetting the exact sound of. My grandfather personally gave Mr. Chen his start, reduced his rent when no one else would take a chance on a man with no track record. And when Chen cut corners, my grandfather didn't end the lease. He sat down with him, talked, gave him time. Wealth that speaks is wealth that leaks. He said that every time I asked him why he didn't show off what he built. I always thought it was humility. Now I understood it differently. He didn't hide his power because he was modest. He used it quietly because quiet power could build things. Loud power could only break them. And Mr. Chen's son stood in the lobby of my grandfather's building, this building, and told me it was his family's territory. Mia must have seen my face change because she stopped what she was doing, walked over with a chair, and sat down across the desk without a word. She waited. She was good at that, at letting silence get heavy enough to hold a real conversation. She'd met my grandfather a handful of times before he passed. The other staff talked about him constantly. She knew what kind of man he was, and she could see I was about to walk into that meeting carrying his name without knowing if I deserved to.
Your grandfather never used his power to punish people. Not once. In all the years I worked here and heard the staff talk about him, he used it to build something. So I need to ask you, Ethan, are you going into that meeting tomorrow because it's the right thing to do or because you're angry?
Both.
Both is honest. I respect that. Just make sure the right one is louder when you walk into that room tomorrow. Your grandfather didn't build this place to impress anyone, Ethan. He built it so that someone like you, someone who carries boxes instead of bragging about buildings, could carry it forward.
We sat there for a while after that. The building hummed its quiet nighttime hum, air vents and distant traffic, and the kind of silence that only exists in empty offices after hours. I looked at her, really looked at her, and noticed something I'd been too busy to see. For the first time in weeks, someone wasn't looking at me like a delivery boy or a building owner. She was looking at me like a person. And that evening, sitting across from each other at a desk covered in evidence files and a dead man's handwriting, that was the only title that mattered. Mia went downstairs to grab dinner from the food court. We'd both been working late and neither of us had eaten. She came back with 2 containers of noodles and a look on her face I hadn't seen before. She told me she'd seen Vanessa sitting alone at a table near the restaurant, the same table from that first day. No Marcus, no Diana, no phone propped up for content, just Vanessa, alone in an empty food court, scrolling through old photos on her phone. Mia said she watched for a moment before Vanessa noticed her. In that moment, Vanessa's face wasn't performing anything. No mask, no angle, no audience. Just a girl staring at her phone, looking like she'd lost something she couldn't quite name. Then Vanessa's phone rang. Marcus, frantic about tomorrow, spiraling about the meeting. And just like that, the mask slid back on. She straightened up, started talking strategy, started scheming. The human moment, if that's what it was, evaporated like it had never existed. Mia told me all of this while we ate noodles at my grandfather's desk. She asked if it changed anything. I thought about it, genuinely. I almost felt something, almost. But I'd watched Vanessa perform sincerity before. She was very good at looking like she meant things. And even if that moment at the table was real, she answered the phone. She went back to scheming. She saw the truth and chose to look away. That's worse than never seeing it at all. Tomorrow would answer everything, and I knew exactly how I was walking into that room. The meeting room on the top floor held 32 chairs. I know because Mia counted them twice that morning. Every tenant in Grandview Plaza was present. Shop owners, restaurant operators, office renters. Mr. Chen sat near the front, hands folded, pale. He'd spent the last 2 days scrambling to fix every violation he could reach before the deadline. Marcus sat next to him, still defiant, chin up, arms crossed. He dragged Vanessa along as a guest to show her how a man handles business. Nobody questioned her presence. The room was tense enough. Diana was there too. Her clothing store was a tenant, attendance mandatory. She'd positioned herself beside Marcus, not Vanessa. Vanessa sat alone at the back, isolated. The property management staff filed in and lined the wall. Mia was among them, calm, organized, holding a stack of files she and I had built together over 5 days. Everyone was looking at the door, waiting for the new owner to walk in. They expected a suit, a corporation, a stranger. What they got was me. I walked in, not in the work clothes they'd seen me in every day for years. In a suit, my grandfather's cut, the one Mia had pressed that morning because she knew what it meant. The property management team stood, then the old tenants, Mr. Park from the shoe repair shop, Mrs. Liu from the dry cleaners, people who'd been in this building for 20 years, stood up, one by one, and bowed. Not deeply, just enough. They'd known my grandfather. They'd watched me grow up carrying boxes through those hallways. This wasn't ceremony, it was recognition. The room went silent. Marcus's face drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Diana's phone slipped from her hand and hit the table. Vanessa stared, and then her face went white. I could see her mind working. The old man's photo in the lobby, the one she'd walked past 100 times without a second thought. She whispered it before she could stop herself. "That old man in the lobby was your grandfather?" I didn't answer her. I sat at the head of the table, opened my folder, and addressed the room. "Thank you all for coming. My name is Ethan. Most of you knew my grandfather. He passed away 3 weeks ago, and I've spent that time learning what he built and how he ran it. I intend to honor that. Today is about the transition, and about making sure every tenant in this building is on the same page moving forward. I started with the general business. 6 tenants with minor outstanding balances. Each received a grace period and a repayment plan. Fair, professional, standard. They nodded, signed, and sat back with visible relief. Then I turned to Mr. Chen's restaurant. I read the violations quietly, without drama. Overdue rent of $14,800, lease compliance breaches documented in my grandfather's personal inspection notes, and false ownership claims posted on social media by his son that directly contradicted the rental agreement on file. Mr. Chen's face didn't crumble at the violations. It crumbled when he looked at me, really looked at me, and recognized the kid who used to carry boxes past his kitchen door, the kid whose grandfather signed his first lease. I saw the moment he understood. It wasn't fear, it was shame. The kind of shame that comes from realizing you've betrayed someone who believed in you. Then I looked at Marcus. He was pale, shaking, trying to make himself smaller in a chair that suddenly felt very public. I opened the incident report from his visit to the management office, and I read his words back to him, calmly, factually, the way you'd read a lease clause. "Mr. Chen, Your son visited our office this week. He told our staff, and I quote, that when he found the new landlord, he would regret it. Well, here I am. The room was dead silent. Marcus's face collapsed in a way I hadn't seen before. Not anger, not defiance, recognition. He was watching the delivery boy he'd mocked, the loser he'd dismissed, the nobody he'd threatened, sit at the head of a table that controlled his family's livelihood. And he was realizing, all at once, that he'd had the answer in that hallway. The old man told him, and he laughed. I presented everything. Marcus's social media claims of ownership, 11 documented contradictions against the lease agreement. Diana's video of my humiliation, presented not as harassment evidence, but as unprofessional conduct by a tenant's associate that damaged the building's reputation. A lease concern, not personal, just business. And the posts Marcus had made from the restaurant's verified business account, linking mockery to a registered tenant operation, a violation of the building's code of conduct clause. Diana stared at the table. She didn't look up once. Then I turned back to Mr. Chen, and my tone changed. The room felt it. I stopped reading from files and spoke from memory. My grandfather left a note in your file, Mr. Chen. He wrote that you were hardworking and deserved a chance. He gave you reduced rent for 2 years when nobody else would take a risk on you. And when you fell short, he didn't end your lease. He talked to you. He gave you time. I want to honor what he started. I offered Mr. Chen a conditional deal, repayment plan for the overdue rent, mandatory compliance with health and safety standards within 30 days, and the lease continues on one condition. The new lease would include a clause prohibiting anyone who had made false ownership claims or threatened management staff from representing the restaurant in any official capacity. If that clause was violated, the lease terminates immediately. Mr. Chen understood. Keep his son involved and lose the restaurant, or cut his son out and keep the business his family depended on. The choice was his. He didn't grovel. He didn't argue. He nodded once, quietly, with the kind of shame that doesn't need words. What happened after the meeting moved fast. Marcus's world collapsed in the specific, poetic way that happens when your entire identity is built on something that was never real. His father chose the restaurant, and Marcus was out. His social media exposure spread beyond the building. Screenshots travel faster than apologies. No business in the area would touch him. He ended up, 6 months later, working for a delivery company, carrying boxes, wearing a uniform, doing the exact job he'd mocked me for in the lobby of a building he swore his family had built. The universe has a sense of humor. It's just not very kind. Vanessa tried to approach me after the meeting. She waited until the room cleared, walked up to me with a face I'd never seen her wear before, something between desperation and practiced sincerity. She started talking about mistakes and second chances and how she'd always known I was different. You didn't leave me because I was poor, Vanessa. You left me because you couldn't tell the difference. That was the last conversation we had. She deleted her social media that night. All the upgrade posts, all the tagged selfies, all the captions about leveling up, but screenshots don't delete. Former classmates who'd seen Diana's original video were now sharing the real story, and the internet was not forgiving. She became the cautionary tale she'd always been afraid of becoming. Diana's video backfired the hardest. She'd filmed herself mocking the building owner and posted it for clout. When the real story spread, the footage made her the joke. Her clothing store let her go. The owner didn't want complications with the new landlord. Vanessa, in one final act of honesty, told everyone about Diana's flip. Diana was left with a minimum wage reputation and a loyalty record that made her unemployable to anyone who valued trust. She mocked people for being poor. She was broke. The irony wrote itself. Mr. Chen honored the repayment plan, fixed the violations. The restaurant actually improved. Better ingredients, better reviews, better everything. He never spoke to me directly again. But every month, his rent arrived on the 1st. Always early, always exact, always with the kind of punctuality that says more than any apology could. And one day, attached to his payment, I found a handwritten note. Just one line. Your grandfather was right about second chances. I won't waste this one. After the meeting, after the fates were sealed and the room was empty, Mia and I took the elevator to the roof. The building was quiet below us. The city spread out wide and gold in the evening light. The kind of view my grandfather saw every day and never once bragged about.
Your grandfather would be proud of you. You know that, right?
I didn't say anything. I just stood there, looking at the city he helped build, feeling the weight of a building on my shoulders, and the warmth of the only person who'd never looked at me differently because of it. She was right. And standing there, for the first time since he died, I felt like I could carry it.